Sure, let's break this down step by step using simple language and examples. Ashoka's Empire. 1. Who was Ashoka? Ashoka was a king of the Maurya Empire, one of the largest empires in ancient India. He is famous for promoting Buddhism and peace. 2. Where did his empire spread? The Maurya Empire was very big. Here's how far it reached. In the northwest, it went all the way to Kandahar in Afghanistan. To the west, it bordered the kingdom of Antiochus II in Syria. In the east, it stretched to Orissa, a state in eastern India. The only areas it didn't cover were the very southern parts of India, where the Cholas and Pandyas lived. These were ancient kingdoms in the south. According to Ashoka's own writings, the Kerala-putras in modern-day Kerala and Satyaputras also lived in areas not included in his empire. Number 3. Why is Ashoka famous? Ashoka is known for two main reasons. Buddhism. He spread the teachings of Buddha and encouraged people to follow them. Pacifism. He believed in peace and tried to avoid wars after witnessing the suffering caused by his earlier battles. The decline of the Maurya Empire. 4. What happened after Ashoka? After Ashoka died, the Maurya Empire began to decline, meaning it became weaker. Here's what happened. The Puranas, ancient texts, mention later Maurya kings, but their reigns, time and power, were usually short. The empire got weaker and started to break apart into smaller regions. Mar 5. Invasions. The empire faced invasions from the Bactrian Greeks. These were groups from areas north of India who came into the region and caused problems for the Maurya rulers. 6. End of the Maurya dynasty. The Maurya dynasty ended with the last king named Brihadratha. He was killed by his own military commander, Pushyamitra. After this, Pushyamitra founded a new dynasty called the Shunga dynasty around 887 BCE. Simple example to understand. Imagine a big school with many classrooms and students. The principal, like Ashoka, is very kind and wants everyone to get along and learn well. But after the principal leaves, some students start fighting, and the school breaks into smaller groups. Eventually, one of the older students takes control and starts a new school. This is similar to what happened to the Maurya Empire. Ashoka was a great king who wanted peace, but after he was gone, the empire fell apart and new leaders took charge. Summary. Ashoka's empire. Huge, from Afghanistan to Orissa, but not the far south. Famous for Buddhism and promoting peace. Decline. After Ashoka, the empire weakened and faced invasions. End. Last king Brihadratha was killed and the Shunga dynasty began. If you have any questions or want to learn more about any part of this, just let me know. Let's break this information down step by step in the simplest way possible, so it's very easy to understand. Urban centers and the Maurya Empire. What is an urban center? An urban center is just a city or a town where many people live, trade, and work. It usually has markets, homes, and public places. During the time of the Maurya Empire, which lasted from around 321 BCE to 185 BCE, cities became bigger and more important. This is called urban expansion, growth of cities. Babur II, Pataliputra, the capital city. Pataliputra was the capital city of the Maurya Empire. It was the most important city in the kingdom. Imagine it as the center of everything, where the king lived and where decisions were made. How was Pataliputra described? 1. Greek sources. A Greek ambassador named Megasthenes visited Pataliputra and wrote about it. According to Megasthenes, the city was surrounded by a wooden wall with towers and openings for shooting arrows, like a defense system. Outside the wall, there was a moat. A moat is a deep ditch filled with water, which makes it hard for enemies to enter the city. 2. What archaeologists found? Archaeologists, people who study old buildings and ruins, have been trying to find out where the old city of Pataliputra was located and how big it was. They found ruins, old remains, of the city in places that are now part of modern Patna in Bihar, India. 3. Important places in Pataliputra. Kumrahar. Archaeologists found a pillared hall here. This is a large room with rows of pillars, big columns, in it. There were 80 pillars in total, 10 rows with 8 pillars in each row. Bulandabai. At this place, they found remains of a wooden wall, or palisade. This may be part of the same wooden wall that Megasthenes talked about. The wall had 2 layers and was made with wooden posts. Think of the wooden wall like a fence around the city, built to protect it from enemies. How does this help us understand? The description of Pataliputra by Megasthenes matches some of the things archaeologists found. This gives us proof that the city was large, protected, and well-planned. Cities like Pataliputra were important during the Maurya rule because they were centers of trade, politics, and culture. Example to understand. Imagine a school where there is a big playground like the city, surrounded by a high fence like the wooden wall. The fence has watchtowers at different points where people can see if anyone is coming. Outside the fence, there's a moat, a ditch filled with water, making it harder for strangers to come in. Inside the school, there are classrooms with many pillars holding up the roof. This is similar to how Pataliputra might have looked. Summary. Pataliputra was the capital city of the Maurya Empire. It was protected by a wooden wall and a moat. Archaeologists found ruins of the city in modern Patna, including a large pillared hall and wooden fortifications. The information matches what Megasthenes, the Greek ambassador, wrote about the city. By putting together ancient texts and modern discoveries, we learn that Pataliputra was a grand, well-protected city during the Maurya period. If you need more explanation or have any questions, feel free. Let's break this down and explain it in a simple, easy-to-understand way. What are Aryan and Alien talking about? They are describing Pataliputra, which was a big and important city in India, and also the capital of the Maurya Empire. Two ancient historians, Aryan and Alien, are telling us what they heard about Indian cities, especially Pataliputra, from Greek sources like Megasthenes. Description of Indian cities. 1. Cities made of wood. Some cities, especially those near rivers or the seacoast, were built using wood. Why wood? Because in India, the rains were very heavy and rivers could overflow and cause floods. If they built with bricks, the bricks would be washed away by the water. Wood was easier to replace if damaged. Imagine a city like a wooden treehouse. If the treehouse gets wet in the rain or a flood, it's easier to fix the wood than if it were made of something heavier like stone or brick. 2. Cities built with brick and mud. Other cities, which were built on high land, on hills or elevated places, were made with bricks and mud. These cities were safer from floods because they were higher up. Think of a city on top of a hill where the rains and floods can't reach easily. This kind of city could be built with bricks because it wouldn't get washed away. The great city of Pataliputra. 1. Pataliputra's size. Pataliputra was the biggest city in India at the time. It was located where 2 rivers, the Ganges, the biggest river in India, and the Sun came together. This made it a good place for trade and transport. Think of it as a city built at the place where 2 big roads meet. It's a smart spot for people to live because they can travel and trade easily. 2. How big was Pataliputra? Megasthenes said the city was 80 stadia long, about 9 miles. That's about the length of 140 football fields lined up. Its width was 15 stadia, about 1/4 mile, or about 22 football fields wide. So, imagine a giant rectangle for the shape of the city, long and not too wide. 3. The ditch around the city. There was a big ditch, like a deep trench, that went all around the city. It was 6 plethra wide and 30 cubits deep. In simple terms, it was about 600 feet wide, as long as 2 football fields, and 45 feet deep, about the height of a 4-story building. This ditch worked like a moat to protect the city from enemies. Think of a moat around a castle, but much bigger. Before, the city walls. The city had walls around it for protection. On top of the walls were 570 towers. Soldiers could stand on these towers to guard the city. There were also 64 gates in the wall. These gates were entrances where people could come into the city or leave. Imagine a giant fort with towers and gates, like something you might see in a movie about ancient times. The towers help defend the city, and the gates let people and goods in and out. Why is this important? This description shows us how advanced and well-planned the cities in ancient India were, especially Pataliputra. The city was big, strong, and important for the Maurya Empire, and it was protected by walls, a moat, and towers. Examples to understand better. 1. Moat example. If you've ever seen a castle in a movie, you've probably seen a moat, a deep ditch filled with water around it. Pataliputra had a similar defense, except its moat was even bigger. 2. City walls example. Think of a city like a big fort. The walls protected the people inside from enemies, and the towers on top were like lookout points where soldiers could stand and defend the city. Summary. Pataliputra was the biggest city in India, located at the meeting point of two rivers. Cities near water were built with wood to survive heavy rains and floods. Cities on high ground were made with bricks and mud. Pataliputra was surrounded by a giant ditch and walls with towers to protect it. The city was very big, about 9 miles long and 1¼ miles wide. It had 570 towers and 64 gates around it, making it very strong and secure. By understanding the size and structure of Pataliputra, we can see how advanced ancient Indian cities were and how they used smart designs to protect themselves. Feel free to ask if you want more details or if anything is still confusing. Let's break this down and explain it simply, step by step, as if I'm teaching you like a kid with no prior knowledge. What is being described? The ancient Greek author Aelion is describing the royal palace of the Indian king, which is the greatest king in all of India. He's explaining how beautiful and impressive the palace and its surroundings are. Comparison to other palaces. 1. Aelion says this palace is even more amazing than two famous places. Susa, a very rich and beautiful city in ancient Persia. Ecbatana, another famous Persian city known for its grandeur. 2. He thinks the Persians might be proud of their own cities, but even their vanity, their big egos, can't match how wonderful the Indian palace is. What's inside the palace grounds? 1. Parks with beautiful birds. Inside the palace, there are tame peacocks and domesticated pheasants. This means these beautiful birds are calm and used to living around humans. The palace parks are like royal zoos, but the animals and birds are treated with great care and respect. 2. Special plants and trees. The king's servants take care of the plants in the palace. There are shady groves, groups of trees that provide shade, and areas full of trees. The trees are very special because the climate, the weather in this part of India is so gentle that the trees are always blooming. They never lose their leaves, and they don't get old or dry. Some trees are local to India, and others are brought from faraway places to add more beauty to the palace. One tree that doesn't grow in India is the olive tree. This tree is from other parts of the world, but it doesn't do well in India. Number 3. Wild birds and animals. Wild birds and animals come into the palace gardens on their own. They feel comfortable and safe here because the environment is so peaceful. Some animals and birds build their nests and homes inside the palace grounds. They feel free because no one bothers them. 4. Parrots. Parrots are native. They naturally come from India, and they fly around the king. They are sacred to the people of India, especially the Brahmanas, a group of priests and scholars. Indians don't eat parrots because they respect them. Why? Because parrots have a special ability. They can imitate human speech. This makes them different from other birds, so they are considered holy. Special fish ponds in the palace. 1. There are beautiful ponds inside the palace grounds. These ponds have huge fish, but the fish are tame, meaning they are not afraid of people. 2. Only the king's sons are allowed to fish in these ponds. When they are still young boys, they practice fishing and sailing boats in the calm waters of these ponds. 3. This is a safe way for the king's children to have fun and learn skills like sailing without any danger of drowning because the water is calm and peaceful. Summary. The Indian king's palace is more amazing than the famous cities of Susa and Ecbatana in Persia. Inside the palace grounds, there are tame birds like peacocks and pheasants, along with beautiful trees that are always in bloom. Wild birds and animals come to live in the palace because the environment is so peaceful, and parrots are treated with special respect because they can mimic human speech. The king's children have special ponds where they fish and sail boats, learning new skills in a safe environment. This shows how luxurious and well-planned the Indian king's palace was, with animals, birds, plants, and water features that added to its beauty. If anything is unclear or you need more examples, feel free to ask. NBPW, Northern Black Polished Ware, was used in India during the period of 700 BCE to 200 BCE. It was a type of pottery known for its shiny black surface and was considered a luxury item at the time. Time period breakdown. Early phase. Around 700 BCE, NBPW began to appear, especially in the Ganga Valley region. Peak usage. The use of NBPW peaked during the Maurya period, 321 BCE to 185 BCE. During this time, it was widely used in cities and settlements across North and Central India. Decline. By around 200 BCE, the use of NBPW started to decline as new types of pottery and techniques became more common. Importance of NBPW. NBPW is considered important because it is one of the earliest types of fine pottery in India. Its presence in different archaeological sites helps historians and archaeologists date those sites and understand the level of development and trade in ancient India. So NBPW was mainly used during 700 BCE to 200 BCE, with its most widespread usage during the Maurya period. Black and red ware was used in India from around 2300 BCE to 700 BCE. It was a type of pottery with black interiors and red exteriors, commonly found in early agricultural and urban settlements. Time period breakdown. Early phase. BRW appears as early as 2300 BCE during the Chalcolithic period, Copper Age, in various parts of India, including the Ganga Valley, Rajasthan, and Maharashtra. Widespread usage. It was widely used during the later Chalcolithic period, around 1800 BCE to 1200 BCE, and into the Iron Age, around 1200 BCE to 700 BCE. Decline. By around 700 BCE, the use of BRW started to decline as other pottery styles like NBPW, Northern Black Polished Ware, became more popular. Importance of BRW. BRW is important for archaeologists to understand the transition from rural agricultural societies to more urbanized and organized settlements in ancient India. It is often associated with early farming communities and is found at various pre-Harappan and post-Harappan sites. So, BRW was mainly used in India from around 2300 BCE to 700 BCE, with its presence marking important phases of early Indian civilization. Detailed explanation of rural and urban life in the Maurya period. Let's go deeper into the aspects of life during the Maurya period, keeping it simple. 1. Social structure. Megasthenes. He was a Greek ambassador who visited India. He wrote about the society he saw. 7 groups. He divided people into 7 groups based on what they did for work. 1. Philosophers. Thinkers and teachers who studied ideas about life, nature, and ethics. Example, a person like Socrates or Plato in Greek culture. 2. Farmers, people who grew crops and raised animals. They were very important because they provided food for everyone. Example, a farmer growing rice or wheat. 3. Herdsmen and hunters. Herdsmen took care of livestock like cows and goats. Hunters went into the forest to catch wild animals for food. Example, a herdsman leading sheep to pasture. 4. Artisans and traders. Artisans were skilled workers who made things by hand, like pottery, jewelry, or tools. Traders bought and sold goods, traveling to different places to exchange items. Example, a potter making clay pots. 5. Soldiers. They protected the kingdom and fought in battles. Important for maintaining safety and order. Example, a soldier training with a bow and arrow. 6. Overseers. Managers who supervised workers and made sure things were done correctly. They helped organize labor on farms and in workshops. Example, an overseer checking on workers in a field. 7. King's counselors. Wise people who advised the king on important decisions. They helped with laws and policies for the kingdom. Example, a wise elder discussing plans with the king. 2. Differences from Varnas and Jatis. Varnas, the traditional caste system in India, has 4 main groups: Brahmins, priests and teachers; Kshatriyas, warriors and rulers; Vaishyas, traders and farmers; Shudras, laborers and service providers. Jatis, these are subgroups within the Varnas, often based on specific occupations. Megasthene's classification. His groups didn't fit neatly into this caste system. They were more about jobs than social status or religious roles. This shows how ancient society was organized differently. 3. Key features of society. Endogamy. This means people could only marry within their own group or clan. For example, if someone was a farmer, they would likely marry another farmer. This kept family ties strong and maintained social structure. Hereditary occupation. Jobs were passed down from parents to children. If your father was a blacksmith, you were expected to become a blacksmith too. This created stability, but limited personal choice. Understanding roles. Knowing these groups helps us understand how each person had a specific role in society. Everyone's job was important for the community to function. Social order. The structure created order and predictability in society. People knew what was expected of them based on their family and job. Historical insight. This information gives historians insight into the lives of people in ancient India, showing how they lived, worked, and interacted with each other. Summary. In the Maurya period, society was organized into 7 main job groups. Each group had its role, and people married within their groups. This system helped maintain order, but also limited individual freedom in choosing jobs and partners. Understanding this helps us appreciate how complex and organized ancient Indian society was. Detailed explanation of society in ancient India. Let's break this down step by step for better understanding. 1. Philosophers in India. What are philosophers? Philosophers are people who think deeply about life, knowledge, and how to live well. In ancient India, they were very respected. Types of philosophers. Brahmanas, Brahmins. These were learned scholars and priests. They studied religious texts and performed rituals. They were seen as spiritual leaders. Shramanas. These included people like monks and ascetics. They sought enlightenment and followed paths like Buddhism and Jainism, focusing on meditation and moral living. 2. Nomadic tribes. What are nomadic tribes? These are groups of people who move from place to place, usually with their animals. Role in society. They were herders, taking care of livestock like cows and sheep. They played an important role in providing food and materials. 3. Artisans. Who are artisans? Artisans are skilled workers who make things by hand. This includes potters, who make pots, carpenters, who work with wood, and weavers, who make cloth. Importance of artisans. They created essential items for everyday life. Artisans were sometimes supported by the government, meaning they didn't have to pay taxes. This helped them focus on their crafts. 4. Ownership of horses and elephants. Why were horses and elephants important? These animals were very valuable for transportation, trade, and warfare. Strabo's note. He pointed out that only the king was allowed to own these animals. This made them symbols of power and wealth. 5. State employment. State workers. Some artisans worked directly for the government. This included armorers. They made weapons for the king's army. Shipbuilders. They built boats for trade and transport. Payment. These artisans received wages, which means they were paid for their work, similar to how people get paid for jobs today. Our 6. Types of labor. Wage labor. Workers who get paid for the work they do. This is similar to most jobs today. Bonded labor. This happens when someone works to pay off a debt. For example, if someone borrowed money, they might work for the lender until the debt is paid. Slave labor. This involves people who are forced to work without pay. They have no choice and must do what they are told. 7. Kautilya's rules. Who was Kautilya? He was a wise teacher and strategist who wrote the Arthashastra, a book on how to run a state effectively. Wage schedule. Kautilya suggested that the government should set standard pay for different jobs. This means that if you were a potter or a blacksmith, there would be a typical amount you should earn. Challenges of implementation. Even though Kautilya made these rules, it was likely hard for the government to actually control wages and make sure everyone followed the rules. 8. Worker groups. Sangha. What is Sangha? This term refers to a group or organization of workers. Purpose. The idea was that workers could come together to support each other, similar to how modern labor unions help workers. However, this system was not as formal or organized as today's unions. Summary. In ancient India, philosophers were important thinkers, divided mainly into Brahmins and Shramanaas. Nomadic tribes contributed to society by herding animals. Artisans were skilled workers who made necessary goods and were sometimes supported by the state. The king controlled valuable animals like horses and elephants. Kautilya's Arthashastra outlined types of labor and wage systems, but enforcing these rules was difficult. The concept of workers forming groups for support existed, but was not as organized as modern unions. Overall, ancient Indian society had a structured approach to labor and social roles, reflecting a complex and interdependent community. Understanding slavery in ancient India. Let's break this topic down into simple parts. 1. Megasthenes and slavery. Who was Megasthenes? He was a Greek ambassador who visited India. He praised Indian society for not having slaves. His view. Megasthenes believed that Indian society treated people better than other places, implying there were no slaves or that slavery was very minimal. 2. The Arthashastra's perspective. What is the Arthashastra? It's an ancient Indian text written by Kautilya, also known as Chanakya. It discusses how to run a kingdom, including laws about people and work. Slaves, dasas. The Arthashastra describes different types of slaves and situations in which people could become slaves. Temporary and permanent slaves. Some people became slaves for a short time, like to pay off a debt, while others might be slaves for life. Reasons for enslavement. People could become slaves due to debts, war, or being born into slavery. At 3. Treatment of slaves. Rules for treatment. Kautilya outlined specific rules for how to treat slaves. Pregnant slaves. If a slave was pregnant, the owner couldn't sell her without making arrangements for her pregnancy. Punishments. There were punishments for mistreating slaves, such as causing a miscarriage. Freedom for slaves. A slave could earn their freedom by paying money. Also, if a female slave had a child with her master, she could be freed, and her child would be considered a legitimate heir. 4. Ashoka's views. Who was Ashoka? He was a Mauryan emperor known for promoting kindness and moral behavior. Ashoka's edicts. In one of his rock edicts, Ashoka talked about treating slaves and servants kindly, suggesting that they deserved respect. 5. Untouchability and social margins. Brahmanical position on untouchability. The Arthashastra reflects stricter views on who could be considered untouchable. Chandalas. This term refers to a group considered outside the social order. According to Kautilya, only Chandalas could use their own wells. They faced severe punishments for touching higher caste individuals. Shvapas. This term referred to people who bred dogs and were also seen as untouchables. Living on the margins, both Chandalas and Shvapakas were viewed as living on the edges of society, meaning they had little social standing or rights. Summary. In ancient India, views on slavery varied. Megasthenes praised Indian society for lacking slaves, while Kautilya's Arthashastra provided a detailed account of slavery, including rules for treatment and rights of slaves. Slaves could gain freedom and had protections, but the society had strict views on social classes and untouchability. Ashoka encouraged kindness towards all, including slaves. Overall, this period showed a complex view of labor, social hierarchy, and human rights in ancient India. Understanding the Arthashastra and the Maurya state. Let's break down the main ideas about the Arthashastra and how the Maurya Empire was structured using very simple language. 1. What is the Arthashastra? First Indian book on statecraft. The Arthashastra is the first important Indian text that talks about how a state or government should be organized and run. Saptanga Rajya. It introduces the idea of Saptanga Rajya, which means 7 parts of a state. These 7 parts work together like a team. 2. The 7 parts of the state, Saptanga. Here are the 7 important parts, or limbs, that make up a state. 1. Swami, the king. This is the ruler, the main person in charge. Think of him like the captain of a sports team. 2. Amacha, ministers. These are the advisors and officials who help the king. They give advice and help make decisions. 3. Janapada, territory and people. This refers to the land and the people living in it. It's like the whole community or city. 4. Durga, fortified capital. This is the stronghold or the protected main city where the king lives. It's like a castle. 5. Kosha, treasury. This is the state's money and resources. Imagine it as the piggy bank that holds all the funds for the government. 6. Danda, justice or force. This refers to law and order. It's about making sure people follow the rules and punishing those who don't. 7. Mitra, ally. This means friends or allies. These are other states or groups that support the king. 3. Monarchy in the Maurya Empire. Central role of the king. The Maurya Empire was a monarchy, meaning it was ruled by a king. The king was very powerful and important, much like a CEO in a big company. Ashoka's role. Ashoka, one of the famous Maurya kings, made it clear that he was the main authority. He referred to himself as the Raja of Magadha, meaning the king of that region. Titles of Ashoka. He also used titles like Devanampiya and Piyadasi. Devanampiya. This means beloved of the gods, showing he wanted people to see him as connected to divine power. Piyadasi. This means pleasant to behold, which indicates he wanted to be seen as a good and kind ruler. Example to simplify. Think of the Maurya state as a big school. The king is the principal. The ministers are the teachers who help the principal. The students in classrooms are the community, Janapada. The school building is like the fortified capital, Durga. The funds for supplies are the treasury, Kosha. The rules and punishments are the justice system, Danda. The partner schools are like allies, Mitra, that work together. Conclusion. The Arthashastra gives us a framework for understanding how the Maurya Empire was organized. The king was at the center, supported by various important parts, each playing a role in the functioning of the state. This structure helped the Maurya Empire maintain control and governance over a vast territory. Let's break it down in the simplest, easiest way possible. Arthashastra, what is it? The Arthashastra is an old book. It tells kings how to gain, keep, and grow their power. It also talks about what a king should do for the people. 2. King's moral duties. Even though the book is about power, it says a king has to be good to his people. The king has duties, jobs to do for them. 3. Protecting people. The king should protect his people, protect their lives, keep them safe, protect their property, make sure nobody steals or destroys it. Example, if a thief tries to take someone's house or money, the king must stop the thief. 4. Welfare and prosperity. The king should make sure his people are doing well, welfare, and getting richer, prosperity. Example, if farmers have a good harvest, the king must help them sell their crops so they can earn money. 5. Happiness of people equals happiness of king. The Arthashastra says, if the people are happy, the king will also be happy. The king should not only care about what he likes, but what makes the people happy. Example, a king may love parties, but if his people need clean water, he should focus on giving them water first. That will make the kingdom happier. 6. King is like a father. The king should act like a father to the people. He should help people who need it the most, like children without parents, old people who cannot work, women without families, anyone who is struggling. Example, just like a father helps his children, the king should help the poor and those who need food or shelter. 7. Removing bad people, Kanta Kashodana. The king's job is to remove or stop bad people. These can be cheaters, thieves, or murderers. He also needs to protect people from natural disasters like floods or earthquakes. Example, if a bad trader cheats people by selling spoiled food, the king should stop him. 8. Protecting the social order. The king must protect society and the rules of society. Society in India followed the Varna system, like different jobs and groups of people. The king should make sure everyone follows their duties. Example, if someone from a certain group is supposed to teach, the king should make sure they do it and help them. Simple examples to understand more. 1. A good king protects everyone. Imagine a village where people live peacefully. One day, some thieves come and start stealing from houses. The king's job is to send guards to catch the thieves and return the stolen things. 2. A king thinks of his people's happiness. A king might like having a lot of jewels or gold, but if his people don't have enough food, he should focus on giving them food first. This way, the people will be happy, and the king will be happy too. 3. A father king. If a family loses their home in a storm, the king should provide them with a new house. Just like a father would take care of his children, the king should take care of those in need. Other ideas from the Arthashastra. 1. Being fair. The king should always try to be fair. He should not favor rich people over poor people. All people should be treated the same. Example, if a poor man and a rich man come with a problem, the king should listen to both equally. 2. Helping the helpless. The king's duty is to help those who cannot help themselves. Example, if an old man cannot work anymore, the king should give him food and shelter so he can live safely. Summary. The king's job is not just to rule, but to care for the people, like a father. He must protect them, make sure they are happy, and help those who are in need. The king must stop bad people and always think about the happiness of his people, even before his own. Here is the content as you requested, without any changes. How Ashoka was similar to the Arthashastra. What is the Arthashastra? The Arthashastra is an ancient book that tells kings how to rule their kingdoms. It says that kings should be wise and strong and protect their people by using both laws and power. Ashoka followed some of these ideas. Like the Arthashastra, Ashoka believed that a good king should make sure his people are happy, safe, and well protected. Both Ashoka and the Arthashastra said that a king should think of his people's welfare, well-being first. Example, just like a good parent looks after their children, Ashoka thought a king should take care of his people. How Ashoka was different. Ashoka's own ideas. Ashoka had special ideas that were a little different from the Arthashastra. His ideas were based on kindness and helping all living beings, not just people in his kingdom. He didn't just want to help his people live a good life in this world. He also wanted to help them have a good spiritual life in the next world. Example, if you were one of Ashoka's people, he wouldn't just give you food and water. He would also teach you how to be a good person so that you could be happy in your future life too. Ashoka's paternalistic view. What is paternalism? Paternalism means treating others like they are your children. Ashoka thought of all the people in his kingdom as his children. He felt it was his job to take care of them and make sure they were happy, just like a father would take care of his kids. Ashoka's rock edicts. Ashoka wrote messages on rocks and pillars for everyone to see. These messages were called rock edicts. In these edicts, Ashoka shared his ideas and told his people what kind of king he wanted to be. Rock Edict 1 and 2. All men are my children. In Rock Edict 1 and 2, Ashoka said, all men are my children. This means Ashoka thought of everyone as his family. Just like a father wants his children to be safe and happy, Ashoka wanted to make sure his people were happy and had everything they needed to live well. Example, if you lived in Ashoka's kingdom, he would want you to have food, water, a home, and good health, just like your own parents would want for you. Ashoka's actions to ensure the welfare of his people. Ashoka didn't just talk about being a good king. He took action to help his people. Planting trees. Ashoka made sure that trees were planted along the roads. Why? Because he wanted travelers to have shade so they could rest during their long journeys. Example, Imagine you're walking a long way under the hot sun. Ashoka made sure there were trees along the road so you could stop and sit in the shade to cool down. Digging wells, Ashoka ordered people to dig wells along roads. Why? So that people could have clean water to drink while traveling. Example, if you were traveling and felt thirsty, you could stop at a well to drink water and feel refreshed. Building hospitals for people and animals. Ashoka made sure there were hospitals for both people and animals. Why? Because he wanted everyone, even animals, to stay healthy. Example, if you or your pet got sick, Ashoka wanted you to have a hospital where you could go and get better. Teaching Dhamma, Ashoka taught people to follow Dhamma. This was the right way of living according to Buddhism. Why? He believed that if people lived by Dhamma, being kind, truthful, and peaceful, they would be happier in this life and also in the next life. Example, if you were living in Ashoka's kingdom, he would teach you to be kind and helpful to others, because that would make your life better now and in the future. Ashoka's authority and sternness. Ashoka was also strict. Even though Ashoka was a kind and caring king, he was also strict when he needed to be. He had authority, which means he had the power to make rules and punish people who did something wrong. In one of his edicts, Rock Edict 2, he told people who lived on the borders of his empire, outside his kingdom, that they should understand that the king would only forgive small mistakes. Example, if someone from another kingdom made a small mistake, Ashoka might forgive them, but if they did something really bad, like hurt others, Ashoka would punish them. Ashoka's concern for people beyond his kingdom. Helping people outside his kingdom. Ashoka didn't just care about the people in his kingdom. He also cared about people who lived beyond his borders. He wanted everyone to be well, even if they weren't his subjects. Example, imagine there was another kingdom far away from Ashoka's empire. If people in that kingdom needed help, Ashoka would still help them, even though they didn't belong to his empire. Summary, Ashoka's kingship was like being a father to his people. He wanted to take care of everyone, not just humans, but also animals. He made sure his people had shade from the sun by planting trees, water to drink, by digging wells, and medical care, by building hospitals. He also taught people how to live good lives by following the Dhamma, which he believed would make them happier now and in the next life. Even though he was kind, Ashoka was also strict when he needed to be, especially with people who didn't follow his rules. He cared about everyone's well-being, even people who lived outside his kingdom. He wanted to help as many people as possible. Here's the text copied exactly as you requested. What are Prakritis? In the Arthashastra, Kautilya talks about 7 important parts of a kingdom. These 7 parts are called Prakritis. You can think of these like the 7 main things every kingdom needs to work well. These are the king, ministers and officials, people who help the king, the kingdom's land, the army, the fort, the treasury, money, the people. In this explanation, we are focusing on the second Prakriti, the Amatya. What is an Amatya? The Amatya is one of the 7 Prakritis. The term Amatya is like a big umbrella that covers many important people in the kingdom who help the king run the government. Under this umbrella, we have different types of people like high-ranking officials, counselors, people who give advice, executive heads, people who run important departments like finance or defense. In simple words, Amatya includes all the top people who help the king make decisions and keep things running smoothly. Who are the mantrins? Now, there is a special word in the Arthashastra for some of the king's closest advisors. These people are called mantrins. The word mantrin means minister. Mantrins are like the king's personal advisors. They are the ones who the king trusts the most and talks to when he needs help in making very important decisions. Think of a mantrin as being like a personal advisor to the king, almost like a close friend who gives the best advice. 2 types of councils. In Kautilya's Arthashastra, he talks about 2 different types of councils. These are groups of people who come together to give advice to the king. There's a small council and a bigger council. Let's look at each. 1. Mantra Parishad, small council. This is a small group of mantrins, ministers. These are the king's most trusted and closest advisors. The king discusses the most secret and important matters with this small group. Imagine you are the king, and you have a small group of people that you trust more than anyone else. You always go to them for advice on the biggest decisions. Mantri Parishad, Big Council. This is a larger group that not only includes mantris, ministers, but also includes executive heads of departments. This group has more people because it deals with more general topics, not just the most important ones. Think of this larger council like a big meeting where you, the king, invite more people, like the heads of different departments, finance, military, agriculture, etc., to talk about the kingdom's issues. Examples from history. Patanjali's Mahabhashya, an ancient text, mentions the Sabha Council of Chandragupta Maurya. This Sabha may have been like the larger Mantri Parishad mentioned in the Arthashastra. In simple terms, Chandragupta had a big council to help him manage his kingdom, similar to what Kautilya describes. Megasthenes, a Greek traveler who visited India, wrote about something similar. He used the word symboloi for a group of people who advised the king. This word means the same thing as Parishad, council. Ashoka's councils. Now let's talk about Ashoka, one of the most famous kings in Indian history. He also used councils to help him rule his empire. We know about this from his rock edicts, messages carved on rocks. These edicts are like Ashoka's public announcements. Rock Edict 3. In one of these rock edicts, Ashoka mentions that a group called the Parishad, council, should direct officers called yuktas in their duties. Yuktas are the people who do day-to-day work, like managing different areas of the kingdom. For example, if you, the king, had a council, Parishad, they would give orders to workers, yuktas, to make sure the kingdom is running smoothly. Rock Edict 6. In another rock edict, Ashoka says that if any problem or argument happens in the Parishad council, the king should be informed immediately. This shows that Ashoka had a smaller, select council, similar to the Mantra Parishad that Kautilya talked about. This smaller group was very important, and if any disagreement happened among them, the king needed to know right away. Important terms to remember. All important officials, counselors, and heads of departments who help the king. Mantrins, the king's most trusted advisors, ministers. Mantra Parishad, a small council of the king's closest advisors, mantrins. A larger council that includes department heads and executive officials. Parishad, a general term for a council of advisors who help the king. Sure. Let's go deeper into the details while keeping everything very simple and easy to understand. 1. Understanding high-ranking officials. High-ranking officials are the important people in a kingdom who help the king manage everything. Just like a team works together to win a game, these officials work together to make sure the kingdom runs well. Why are they important? They help the king make decisions. They manage different parts of the kingdom. They keep everything organized so the kingdom can grow and be safe. Factor 2. Radhagupta and Ashoka. A closer look. Radhagupta was a wise man and a minister who served Bindusara, who was Ashoka's father. When Ashoka wanted to become the king, Radhagupta supported him. He gave Ashoka good advice and helped him gain power. Example. Imagine you want to be the captain of a sports team. You have a friend, like Radhagupta, who helps you get noticed by the coach and encourages others to support you. Hasher 3. The king's accessibility. Accessibility means being available to talk or listen. In a kingdom, it's crucial for the king to be accessible to his officials. Megasthenes, the Greek traveler, noted that even when the king was busy with personal activities, like getting a massage, he was still open to talking to his ministers. Why is this important? If the king is always available, his officials can share important information quickly. This helps the king make better decisions and solve problems faster. Example. Think of a teacher who is always available during lunch to talk to students about any problems they have. This makes it easier for students to ask for help. 4. Ashoka's Rock Edict. Ashoka had something called rock edicts. These were messages carved on stone that explained how he wanted to rule and what was important for the kingdom. In Rock Edict 6, He said he wanted to be informed about any disagreements or problems in the council, group of advisors. This shows he valued communication and wanted to stay updated. Importance of rock edicts. These edicts helped the public understand the king's intentions. They were like rules or guidelines that showed how the kingdom should be run. Example, if a principal puts up a notice in school about rules for students, that's similar to how Ashoka used rock edicts to inform people about his plans. 5. Different high officers in the kingdom. Each high-ranking official had specific jobs. Here are some important positions. Samahartri, Chief Collector of Revenue. This person collects taxes, money, from the people. They keep records of how much money comes in and goes out. Samnidhatri. This officer is responsible for managing the kingdom's wealth. They keep track of the royal treasures, like gold and food supplies. Davarka, Palace Attendants. This person manages the attendants who work in the king's palace. They ensure the palace runs smoothly. Antaravamshika, Chief of Palace Guard. This officer is in charge of the king's safety. They make sure that the palace is secure from any threats. Adhyakshas, Department Heads. These officials run different parts of the government, like military, agriculture, and trade. Each Adhyaksha manages their own department and reports to the king. Importance of these roles. Each officer has a crucial part in keeping the kingdom organized and running well. They help the king by providing specialized knowledge and skills in their areas. Example, in a school, you have different teachers who are in charge of subjects like math, science, and history. Each teacher helps the students learn and grow in their subject area. 6. Akshapatala Office. The Akshapatala Office was responsible for keeping records and conducting audits. This means they checked if the kingdom's resources were being used properly and if the accounts were accurate. Why is this office important? It ensures that there is no theft or waste of the kingdom's resources. Keeping good records helps the king make informed decisions based on real data. Example, in a school, the accounting office checks if the money from school fees is being spent wisely on supplies, activities, and maintenance. 7. Officers during Ashoka's time. While Ashoka's rock edicts do not mention every officer directly, it is likely that he had officials similar to those described in the Arthashastra. These officers helped him maintain control and make sure the kingdom prospered. Example, just like in a big company, where there are managers and team leaders for various departments, Ashoka would have had his team of officials to help manage the entire kingdom. Summary to help you remember. High-ranking officials are vital for helping the king run the kingdom smoothly. Radhagupta played an essential role in helping Ashoka gain power. The king should always be available to listen to his advisors, as noted by Megasthenes. Rock edicts help inform the people about the king's intentions and rules. Different officers like the Samahartri, Revenue Collector, and Samnidhatri, Treasurer, have specific duties that are crucial for the kingdom's success. The Akshapatala office keeps records and ensures everything is accounted for. By understanding these roles and responsibilities, we can see how a kingdom operated effectively with the help of its officials. Sure, let's break this down into simple parts and make it easy to understand. 1. What is the Arthashastra? The Arthashastra is an ancient Indian book written by a wise man named Kautilya, also known as Chanakya. It talks about how to run a kingdom effectively. It covers many topics like politics, economics, and military strategy. 2. The role of the Purohita. The Purohita is the royal priest in a kingdom. This person is very important because they help the king with spiritual matters and advice. What should a Purohita be like? 1. High character. This means the Purohita should be a good person, honest and trustworthy. 2. Reputed family. They should come from a respected family, which means their background should be good. 3. Trained in Vedas and Vedanga. The Purohita should have studied ancient texts, called Vedas, that contain knowledge about life, rituals, and the universe. 4. Understand omens. They should know how to interpret signs from the universe that might tell us about the future. 5. Knowledge of politics. They should understand the science of politics, the Arthashastra, to give the king the best advice. 6. Counteract calamities. They should be skilled in using special practices, called atharvan, to help protect the kingdom from disasters. Kaphashtra. Why is the Purohita important? The Purohita gives guidance to the king in both religious and political matters. Kautilya advises that the king should treat the Purohita like a student respects their teacher, like a son respects their father, and like a servant respects their master. Example. Imagine a school where the teacher helps students not just with studies but also with life lessons. The teacher is very important, just like the Purohita is important to the king. Number 3. Eclectic religious beliefs. The Maurya kings, including Ashoka, had many different beliefs and practices. This means that the Purohita might not have been a significant figure in their courts. We don't have clear evidence that he was always present. 4. Mahamatas, important officials. The word Mahamata refers to high-ranking officials in the Mauryan Empire. Ashoka's inscriptions mention various types of Mahamatas, which were specific officials with different responsibilities. Types of Mahamatas. 1. Antamahamatas. These officials were in charge of the frontier areas, the borders of the kingdom. They were responsible for keeping those areas safe and well managed. 2. Itijaka Mahamatas. These officials focused on women's welfare. They made sure that women in the kingdom were taken care of and their needs were met. 3. Dhamma Mahamatas. Ashoka created a new group of officials called Dhamma Mahamatas when he had been king for 13 years. Their main job was to spread Dhamma, which means righteousness, goodness, and moral law throughout the empire. Why are these officials important? Each type of Mahamata has a special job that helps the kingdom function well. They ensure that specific areas, like the frontiers and women's rights, are properly managed. Example. Think of a school with different teachers for math, science, and art. Each teacher helps students learn about their subject. Similarly, each Mahamata helps manage a different part of the kingdom. 5. Summary of key points. Purohita, a royal priest who advises the king on spiritual and political matters. He should be good, knowledgeable, and from a respected family. Mahamas, important officials in the kingdom, each responsible for different areas like border safety and women's welfare. Dhamma Mahamatas, a new type of official created by Ashoka to promote goodness and moral behavior in the kingdom. By understanding these roles and their importance, we can see how the Mauryan Empire was organized and how the king made sure that everything was taken care of.